Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well and that you're all having a fantastic day. The question of the day is, if you could only hold one cryptocurrency, either XRP, Ethereum, or Bitcoin for the next 10 years and no other coin, which coin would it be and why? And without any further ado, let's jump right into it. For those of you who have not been here, have been missing the news, especially over the course of the last month and a half, it hasn't really been that long. The narrative has once again, I don't want to say shifted, but it's moved further in another direction than it previously was before. At the beginning of this year, with the uncertainty of if we were going to get Bitcoin ETFs or not, a lot of the ideas of where Bitcoin was going to go this year stemmed nearly completely around the halving. I told you that as well earlier this year. I was trying my darndest to not become obsessed with the idea of us getting ETFs because we had not over the course of a 10-year period. Once we got them, the market began to move down. This appears to be mainly due to the actions of the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. They were selling off Bitcoin on behalf of their clients and therefore price go down. Since then, a lot has changed within the market, especially when it comes to optimism as to where prices are going to go. And we are now hearing the same thing kind of echoing over and over and over. So typically within the cryptocurrency market, within the price movement ideas, we'll hear from anywhere from 7 to 12 different people, the higher ups, the well-knowns within the space, and they'll throw out a number and see if it ends up sticking onto a wall. This time is a slightly bit different, simply because they're all saying the exact same thing this time, which is, I find, rather odd. Historically, maybe history is changing. We have seen that we do not typically have any major price movements until not only after the halving, but months down the line. I've mentioned before, we're in a brand new space. We're talking about countries buying Bitcoin, and we're talking about institutions. We can see their numbers, thank goodness, because a lot of times you'll hear that a company's buying, but people don't really react to the actual buying. Oh, that's cool. They bought 5,000 Bitcoin. That's incredible. But when you're getting the $100,000, $200,000 Bitcoin accumulated over the course of X period of time, it does something to the market. It does something to see how much money is flowing into ETFs every single day. The last number that we received was around $500 million per day. Is flowing into the ETFs. Of course, some days are even higher, like 700 million. But these are extremely significant numbers. The ETFs are, rather, BlackRock's ETF is the one of the best performing ETFs of all time. It has done better than 99.98% of all other ETFs. You've heard me say this before. Where people think that we're going to be by the end of this year is a little bit striking, just because I think in a I don't want to say in an expansive way. That's not at all what it is. It's more of a, if it happens to Bitcoin, it's going to be happening to everything else. And I think this is probably going to be a very historic bull run, in that we are already in a bull run. If you're paying attention to the numbers that we're seeing every single day, this is bull run territory. But just the idea of where we could go comparative with the other altcoins, and I think there's a lot of money that's going to be made. Fundstrat's head of research, his name is Tom Lee, has doubled down on his Bitcoin price prediction. He's stating now that Bitcoin is going to hit 150,000 US dollars, 150,000 US dollars per coin, stating that the crypto could reach that price level this year. The numbers that we got before, around the beginning of this year, people, it's going to sound crazy. For those of you who remember the end of December, beginning of January, the idea was that the end of 2024, we might see a $55,000 to a $60,000 Bitcoin. Yeah, remember those days when everyone was like, I think we can make 60,000. Once we got the ETF approved, we started hearing anywhere between $75,000 to $80,000 by the end of the year. There were even some people, bless their hearts, who were talking about that Bitcoin might finish the year at 50,000. And I was like, okay. The normal number after that became 100,000 by the end of this year. And the number that we're now getting over and over in the pendulum swing is between $120,000 to $150,000 per Bitcoin by the end of this year. This would mean that 2025 would then be setting Bitcoin's price up to not only double, but usually triple. This is usually what Bitcoin's price does. Going from the end of 2024 to sometime in 2025, no one knows when the end of the bullish move up ends, but it's typically around 8 to 10 months into the year after the halving. This is usually what it's been, except for 2017, where it was until the end of the year. So it was even longer, if you will. As a lot of the predictions that we're now getting for Bitcoin next year are circling around conservative, it's 200. If we get 150 this year, we're going above 200 next year. Conservatively for next year, it's been 200,000. Conservatively, insanely, it's going to around $600,000 per coin. He cited 3 key reasons driving his bullish price forecast. Describing Bitcoin as sound money, he emphasized that the cryptocurrency is incredibly secure and proving to be a good risk asset and a great store of value. I think a lot of the narrative for Bitcoin is like 5 different things right now. I think at some point it will prove itself to be multiple. But the idea of being an asset that is risky, but that is a hedge against other things, usually saying the US dollar, if the US dollar, and I mean, even mathematically, we can see that the US dollar is constantly inflating. It's lost 99% of its value since 1971. And also just comparative to the other fiat currencies that we also have on the planet. For those of you who missed it a couple of days ago, Bitcoin passed a brand new all-time high in every other country except for the US. Like weeks ago. It's been completely insane. So being able to see the difference between these things, it becomes a pretty easy sell. Tom Lee, a managing partner and head of research at Fundstrat Global Advisors, shared his Bitcoin price prediction in an interview with CNBC on Wednesday. Fundstrat is an independent financial research boutique providing strategic market insights. Lee has over 25 years of experience, yada, yada. He worked at JP Morgan Chase, and now he also worked at Solomon Smith Barney. When asked about what he thinks the price of Bitcoin will be for the remainder of this year, he replied, I think it could be as high as $150,000 this year. He explained that his bullish prediction comes from several factors. He said, because you've got demand improving with the spot Bitcoin exchange traded fund ETF, and you have the supply shrinking with the halving, and if monetary policy eases, which we expect, that's supportive for risk assets and Bitcoin holding up. I don't think the drawdown is going to start that soon. So the idea also is insignificantly not always in the crypto news as much anymore. A lot of people are assuming that we are going to see a fund. Wait. interest rate cuts. There we go. Over the course of this year. No one knows exactly how many. I think previously before we heard that there would be 3 interest rate cuts, and then we heard 5. And now I think the prediction is somewhere around 4. When we saw cuts happening before and or we had a near 0 interest rate and more money was being printed, as a lot of other countries as well have also announced that they're going to basically start turning back on the money printer because economies are not doing too great. This helps assets such as Bitcoin and things in the stock market also move up in price as well. The halving is going to be a very significant thing. I know I keep mentioning if you've never been here before, it's basically because I know that whenever the market does well, we always see a lot of people in the market. But the issue is that there seems to be, I don't want to say skepticism, but if you've never been here before, you don't know really what to expect. People go crazy when the halving happens. Like they completely lose their mind because it's some really weird, I didn't do it over the last 2 years. I need to do it right now. If Bitcoin's price ends up hitting this price by the end of the week and I didn't buy some, I'm going to be really upset. And then when they do buy some and Bitcoin's price does hit that number that they were expecting it to hit, they go, well, what if it goes 5,000 higher? I have to buy some more. And this ends up being a complete flurry. I'm not sure exactly what word to throw there, but people also brag. And I would state, none of you, make sure you do not brag to anyone about how much crypto you have or how much money you've made. It is no one's business. The other 100 million people not watching this video, they tend to brag. They tend to brag at dinners and other things. Yeah, I made $18,000 from crypto last week. That, if you tell someone on a, what's the word? The word's not basic income, but like on like a base income level. Hey, I made half of your salary over the course of a week. You could have done the exact same. More people start throwing their money into the market as well. So in completely insane news, we're still not at the halving. The price predictions right now are quite spectacular. And I do hope that we actually end up reaching them simply because it means people will be making a lot of money. And I mean like an egregious amount of money in a very short period of time. That's the Tom Lee has joined the ranks of saying Bitcoin is going over $100K to $150,000 over the course of this year. And if the next story that we're going to go over ends up being true, $150,000 is going to be nothing. And yeah, let's move on. So I'll work backwards quickly and then give you the present. A number of years ago, we had news, this was around 2017, that apparently there were a couple of countries who were secretly buying Bitcoin. No one believed it. I don't know why people chose to not believe this kind of news. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. Mathematically, there would be at least 4 or 5 countries being like, hey, what's that new thing? Everyone's talking about it. Let's go buy some. If you thought it was only you and your friends who were trying to make millions, guess what? Governments also want to make billions of dollars as well. Don't know where that confusion came from. The first thing that we heard from explicitly was from Russia. A number of years ago, we spoke about this about a good week ago as well. It was back in the news. That apparently one of their finance ministers literally went on the news and was like, yeah, we're going to be buying some Bitcoin with the extra money that we have. And then the next day he was in the news and literally he was like, bit what? I don't know what this is. We know buy any. And basically, like, the whole conversation was shut down because I assume somebody behind the scenes was like, ixnay. Like, why are you mentioning that out loud? Around 2019, we heard that there were 3 countries, you can Google it, who went to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and basically told them that they were going to start buying Bitcoin to issue Bitcoin bonds. The idea being is that the countries weren't in an economic good shape because of years of sanctions and because the US dollar dominates everything. And they basically were like, we're going to start buying Bitcoin as a hedge against the dollar and then issue bonds against it to be able to make more money, to be able to buy more Bitcoin to strengthen our country. As this is real, like look it up. Go to Google, type in 3 countries, IMF Bitcoin bond, you'll find it. The International Monetary Fund was quite swift, and they said, I almost cursed there. They basically said no. Then we got news that apparently there were 3 countries besides those who were actively buying Bitcoin. And those ended up being El Salvador, the Central African Republic, and I forgot the name of the third one. Oh, what was the third one? But El Salvador is the one that usually ends up being in the news because their president is far more newsy. He's always in the news. He makes sure he's in the news. He talks about, things all the time. He's more vocal with them being into the space. And then we started getting news around 2020 that there were a number of countries who were actually mining Bitcoin, and that people were like, what? You can't do that. It's only China and decentralized. And I was like, you have to understand that governments know nearly everything that's going on. When they see these trends, when they see these things happening, it's not them like sitting back and going, well, we'll check back in 15 years. Maybe then we'll buy some. No, they have a lot of extra money at their disposal. So they go, put 15 million into it. Oh, we have 47 billion left over. All right, throw 200 million into it and we'll see what happens. They do this for other funds as well around the world. You know that countries invest in other countries all the time. Any excess money gets allocated somewhere. They buy up tons of land and property. If you get a chance, look up how much land governments own of other countries and like the percentage of cities. It's quite a lot. They have a lot of money flowing through at any given point in time. I think we started hearing in 2020 as well that there were a number of countries once again who were under sanctions. They don't care to be controlled, who basically also came forward and were like that they were officially using Bitcoin as money for import and exports within their countries. I also thought that was going to be the moment where everyone was like, oh, snaps, it's finally happening. But of course, no one really paid attention because for some reason, people never pay attention to any other news that's happening on any other country except for the United States. And I think that is a gigantic folly, simply because you get to see the actual trends of what's happening before it hits the US. Because by the time it hits the US, Bitcoin's already too expensive for everyone else to actually pay attention to it. That's why a couple of weeks ago, when we had news that Bitcoin had already hit a brand new all-time high in Argentina, in Turkey, and a bunch of other places, I was like, do you see what's going on? Like, we have not gotten to the halving and they're already hitting a brand new all-time high. And then we heard it was from 13 countries. And then I remember I was like, it just hit a brand new all-time high in Japan. Yawn, not that interesting. So now everyone's focusing back once again only on the United States, not understanding that only 21 million coins, 4 to 6 million are lost and gone forever. And now we're getting like literal conversations of countries who are buying. These countries are not buying only one Bitcoin to secure their place in, as the 1% of Bitcoin holders. No, they're going to be buying as much as humanly possible. The idea that there's no other countries except for the ones that we've heard in the news who are buying is nonsensical. You know that buying happens behind the scenes, right? Remember the news that we were getting this was like 8 days ago? For those of you who were not here, there are multiple new addresses that are being created for Bitcoin every single day. Cool, got it. However, there are a lot of addresses who are daily buying 100, 300, 500 Bitcoin daily. It's never just one Bitcoin. I think a lot of the assumption that people have in their minds is that these people are being like, all right, well, let's just buy one. Let's not be greedy. No, people are, of course, they're buying up multiple Bitcoin at the exact same time. That's the significance of the people from BlackRock holding 1% of all Bitcoin in 4 weeks. I mean, it literally goes without saying. Imagine if they repeated that over the course of 5 years. They'd have all the Bitcoin. So recently in the news, it says Skybridge Capital founder Anthony Scaramucci has apparently written that he heard from someone else that this certain thing is happening. And I'll explain why this weird chain of events is probably true. Skybridge Capital founder Anthony Scaramucci made a new statement about Bitcoin on Twitter. Apparently, Scaramucci said that he believes or heard that Qatar, Qatar, one of the richest countries that has ever existed, is apparently buying Bitcoin and adding it to their reserves. This article says that it could be the first Middle Eastern country to do so. That's because people don't read the news and aren't paying attention to anything else that's going on. The other countries that were buying before were Middle Eastern countries. Google if you get the chance. I should have had the article here. Google if you get the chance. Gosh, what was the? I'm trying to think of the actual article name. Type in like country using Bitcoin import exports. The country starts with an I. It's one of those. I want to say IRAQ. I think that was the main country who was in that actual news article. And we went over that when it happened about a year ago. And I was telling everyone, and I was like, well, listen, if they're using it for imports and exports, they're paying someone. You can't simply be like, okay, well, thank you for the crackers or whatever they're buying. And then be like, okay, here's Bitcoin. Oh, you don't take Bitcoin? Sorry, I guess the food is free. No, there's like they're in cahoots with someone else who's also doing the exact same thing. So we know that Middle Eastern countries have been buying for a while. We've even had news for years that all these rich people in Dubai are constantly buying. We've had news that the major Dubai banks have been working with Ripple for 5 years now. We also had news before that a lot of the whales are apparently also coming from Dubai, literally living in Dubai, and they have people who are buying for them as well. We've also heard rumors before of Dubai also buying allocations of Bitcoin and or exposure to Bitcoin through other markets as well. You think that these rich countries aren't doing that? You think that rich people, what planet are we living on where it's just now news that Qatar might be buying? I feel like in a world where you have 100 million, people literally oh, that man's worth $100 million or that guy's worth $6.4 billion. You think no one in these countries has been buying before? You think people in the government just sit in there, I assume castles because, rich, just sit there and they're like, what should we invest in today? Maybe another boat? No, they know what's going on. Oh boy, I'm getting flustered. He says that Max Kaiser, says Qatar may have added Bitcoin to their balance sheet. If true, all we can say is thank you, Max Kaiser. And here's the tweet for it right here from Max Kaiser writing, it's happening. So the reason why this, like I said, this weird information chain of command is fascinating is because Max Kaiser, while a character, he's quite, I don't want to say Monty Python-y, but he's definitely different. Has mentioned before that he saw other countries actively buying Bitcoin, that he was with them. He said he was having conversations with them and he was like, buy some Bitcoin. And they were like, okay, sure, why not? And he's been correct before. So, and he's also hanging out with the other people from Strike. I think it's Strike. I forgot the guy's name, the guy who's always wearing a hat. He also hangs out with Max Kaiser, and they've basically been going around 2 different countries to basically tell them, add some Bitcoin to your reserves as a just in case. And they've been correct before, multiple times. It's more so that the Qatari government has not come out openly to us, the public, and told us so. That's because they're a government. So a lot of times when we end up getting news, I understand the skepticism, I really do, but understand that my conviction tends to be a lot stronger simply because I'm in this market every single day. It would be one thing if I had this channel for 8 years, which I've had, for this long and gotten news and been like, well, Max Kaiser hasn't been correct before. But when you hear these things constantly happening and these people have these connections and they tend to be correct, and that's kind of where things are going. There was also someone else, it's not Max Kaiser. There was someone else a couple of weeks ago who also mentioned that they were in a room with multiple other world leaders. And I think 3 of them said, okay, cool, we're going to start buying Bitcoin. That was a couple of months ago, I think, or so as well. There's also this article floating around for those of you who haven't seen it. It's quite popular. Snowden apparently says that he has information that apparently there is a country who's secretly buying Bitcoin. And I think it's not even a Middle Eastern country. Apparently, it's another one that's also in the news as well. And also, one of my favorites that people keep forgetting is a constant thing. For those of you not looking at the screen, it says why the U.S. government has $5 billion in Bitcoin. Yes, the U.S. government has a lot of Bitcoin, and they're probably actively accumulating all the time. Like, do you expect the U.S. government to be like, okay, guys, we just bought more Bitcoin, just letting you know? No, like they run and control the US dollar. Why would they make this actually public to anyone else? The only reason why we know is because over the course of the last 10 or so years, they've made it one of their prerogatives to find websites which they deem to be illicit and or not allowed, and have basically taken the Bitcoin from those websites. Years ago, they used to actually sell this Bitcoin back onto the market, like weeks later. But something weird happened around 7 years ago where they just have been accumulating and have not sold anything. So yeah, they have around 200,000 Bitcoin, and we can, you know how the US and governments work, right? They're probably buying more behind the scenes, but we're just not hearing about it. I'm always really confused. I don't know how long people have been on this planet, not even in a joking way. How do you not know that things happen in secret? Do you have immediate access to world leaders, to text them or to call them? People just assume that if it's not happening in the news, that it's not happening at all. And then we end up hearing stuff about these companies who've been we've been buying Bitcoins since 2014, and people go, oh, but it wasn't in the news. And I'm like, what did you expect these people to announce? Remember, you can even find this article. This is 2017, 2018. There were rumors that BlackRock was already buying Bitcoin back then. And I remember bringing it. I was like, okay, guys, this is kind of huge. And people were like, yeah, but it wasn't on CNBC. I didn't see. This wasn't on Fox Business. How do you know it's true? And it's like, what do you? And then you need to hear that these people have actively entered the market through ETFs. And then people go, now they're in the market. Now I can see the SEC filing. The world confuses me quite heavily on more than a few occasions. But yeah. So at the moment, another portion of the news is that apparently there are other countries who are buying up Bitcoin. This should come as no surprise, because that's how they know what's going on. If we know the actual devaluation numbers of the US dollars, do you think the other countries don't? Do you think at some point, even realistically, if at the end of the year, your country has a surplus and has to figure out what to do with the extra money, and even after putting aside several $1 billion as a just in case, you still have $850 million equivalent left, you don't think at some point they're going to be like, let's buy 3 million worth of Bitcoin every year? So anyway, we'll see. Typically, it takes around 2 weeks for this news to shimmy on down to the rest of us, as in when it does happen or actually hit the presses, hits the newses, the public, then we end up hearing about it. But the track record for a lot of these people who end up saying this information, it's kind of like years ago. This was really weird. A lot of years ago, we used to have a lot of news, kind of like a person standing in a dark alleyway wearing a oh gosh, what's that detective's name? Wearing a, like one of those 1920s hats, standing in the shadows, giving information. I don't know what I'm talking about. But that kind of thing used to happen all the time, where there were rumors of things happening. It hit our news and it always ended up happening. So I feel like I should be surprised, but no, I'm not. Of course, these countries, do you know how the way that last point. If you ever get a chance, watch a documentary on how the Middle East actually makes money. These people realized literally back in the 90s that there would not be enough petrol forever. Surprise! Yeah, they were like, hey, this is a fine resource. It's probably not going to be here forever. So they decided to be like, how do we make more money in other ways? So they literally decided to make these mega cities like Dubai to be able to have more tourism. But they were like, Tourism alone can't do it. So they started buying other land. They started buying agriculture. They started buying all these other things. They invest heavily in tech companies because they realized that the future was probably not going to come from the ground, and it was going to come from a multitude of other things. Do you think over the course of them investing in all these companies and countries and enterprises and all these other things that for some reason the word Bitcoin has eluded them, that they're just hearing about it now? Do you think that Qatar, like 8.5 weeks ago, was like, hello, Max Kaiser, Bitcoin? I do not know. Can you please explain this to me? I've never heard of this thing. No, it's not just you, your friends, and your family who know what this is. These people are wealthy. These people are dripping in literal gold. They know exactly what Bitcoin is and probably have been buying for a very long time. It's just not public. The same exact way that like the majority, if you asked people on the streets in the United States, how much Bitcoin does the US government hold? 99.9% would say they don't hold any Bitcoin. I think that's going to do it for this video. I do sincerely hope that you have all enjoyed my ramblings. I do hope you all are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever you might be. I do hope it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and or supporting. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.